Vivid verses.
The restaurant my friend chose was the kind of place where the waiters don't write anything down and the tables are spaced far enough apart that you can have a real conversation. I've known Theodore since we were 16, back when he was still Teddy and I was still the quiet kid who never said much at parties. He'd made money in a way I didn't fully understand, and I'd made money in a way he didn't fully understand. And somewhere in the middle we'd stayed, friends the way men do. Annual dinners, texts about sporting events, the occasional long phone call when one of us was going through something. He'd invited me out alone, which was unusual. Normally his wife came. Normally we brought our partners. Tonight it was just the two of us and a bottle of something I wouldn't have ordered myself. And Theodore was doing that thing he does when he's working up to saying something he doesn't want to say, which is ordering more food than we could possibly eat and laughing a little too hard at his own jokes. I'll let him get there in his own time. I've always been willing to wait people out. It's one of the few things I'm genuinely patient about. Somewhere around the second course, he set his glass down and looked at me with the particular seriousness of someone who has rehearsed an opening line and then discarded it. "I need to tell you something," he said, "and I need you to hear it the way I'm saying it, not the way it sounds." Here we go, I thought. He's been sitting on something for at least 3 weeks, possibly longer. The way he's been avoiding eye contact since I walked in. Go ahead. You know, Marguerite and I have been doing that thing where we have drinks with her old college friends. The thing she's been dragging me to. I know. Last week one of them, you don't know her, her name doesn't matter, she'd been drinking a little. And she started telling this story about Inez. About how Inez met you. I kept my face still. This is a learned skill, not a natural one. My face has been doing whatever I tell it to do for about 20 years now, because my face, left to its own devices, is a traitor. What did she say? Theodore rubbed his jaw. She said Inez had been looking for someone like you for about a year before she met you. That she made a list of what she wanted, not like a romantic checklist, I mean a real list with categories. Income brackets, family structure, professional standing. That she'd use some kind of alumni network or a professional directory, I don't know exactly, to narrow it down. And that when she found you, she spent 3 months figuring out how to be in the same room as you without it looking engineered. I picked up my water glass, set it down, picked it up again. The party at Whitfield's, I said. What? The party at Whitfield's. That's where I met her. That was engineered. According to this woman, yeah. Inez apparently told her she'd learned you were friends with Whitfield 6 months before and had been cultivating a connection with Whitfield's wife specifically so she could be invited. Whitfield's wife, I thought, who Inez never particularly liked, who Inez always found an excuse to call whenever we hadn't seen them in a while, whose birthday Inez remembered without checking. Theodore, yeah, why are you telling me this? He looked at me for a long moment. Because I've known you a long time. And because this woman wasn't gossiping. She was confessing. She thought I knew. She thought everyone knew. She was drunk enough that she said it and sober enough to go white when she realized I hadn't known. Marguerite and I talked about it for 2 days before I called you. Marguerite wanted me to leave it alone. I couldn't leave it alone. I appreciate that. Do you? Because I feel like I just set something on fire in your life, and I'm not sure I had the right. The interesting thing, I thought, is that I am not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. There's a part of me that has been waiting to hear something like this for a long time, and that part of me has just exhaled. You had the right, I said. Tell me what else she said. He told me what else she said. It wasn't a lot. The friend had caught herself and stopped talking, but it was enough. It was enough to confirm that this wasn't a story that had been exaggerated in the telling. It was enough to confirm that Inez had described her approach to me at some point to someone in operational language. Targeting, access, positioning. I ate the rest of my dinner. I asked Theodore about his kids. I asked about his work. I made him laugh twice. When the bill came, I paid it, over his objections because I wanted him to know I wasn't angry with him and because I wanted the transaction of the evening to be simple and clear. I hugged him in the parking lot. I told him I loved him. I told him I'd call him in a few days. Then I drove home. The drive home was the part where most men would have been shaking. I was not shaking. What I was doing as I moved through the empty streets at an even speed with my hands at 10 and 2 was a series of calculations. Calculation 1. Is this true? Not whether Theodore believes it's true. Theodore believes it's true, but whether it is actually true. The friend might have been exaggerating. Inez might have been telling a story to a friend that made her sound more intentional than she was. Women embellish. People embellish. I should not act on a single drunk account. Calculation 2. If it is true, what does true mean? There is a version of true where Inez had a type, looked for her type, and found me. That is not a crime. That is how many people meet their partners. I have type 2. I had a type in her. The question is not whether she was looking for someone like me. The question is whether the relationship I have been in for a long time is the one I thought I was in, or whether it is a transaction that I've been unknowingly participating in. Calculation 3. Where is the evidence? Not anecdotal evidence. Not a drunk friend at a dinner party. Actual evidence. If Inez ran this operation the way the friend described, there is a paper trail. Nobody runs a multi-year plan out of their head. She's too organized for that. She's the most organized person I have ever met. I thought about the shared laptop. We bought it together 4 years ago. It lived on the desk in the office we shared, the one with the window that faced the garden. We used it for taxes, for joint projects, for the household accounts. She used it more than I did. I have my own machine for work. She worked from the laptop when she wasn't at her office. The laptop had 2 user profiles on it, but we both knew each other's passwords because we had agreed early on that we weren't the kind of people who hid things from each other. The irony of that agreement began as I drove to acquire a certain texture. Calculation 4. Do I look? If I look, I'm the kind of man who, on the basis of a drunk friend's disclosure, invaded his partner's privacy. If I don't look, I'm the kind of man who, having been told something credible about the foundations of his own life, chose not to verify it. Between those two, there's only one choice. Calculation 5. When? She is away until Sunday evening. It is Tuesday night. I have 4 days and nights in which the house is mine. That is more than enough. I pulled into the driveway. I sat in the car for a moment with the engine off, listening to it tick as it cooled. I thought about whether I was doing the right thing. I concluded that I was doing the thing I was going to do, and that whether it was right was a question I could answer later when I had more information. I went inside. I turned on a single light in the kitchen. I made myself a cup of tea I did not drink. Then I walked into the office, sat down at the desk, and opened the laptop. I started in the obvious places. Her email, her messages, her browser history. I was not looking for infidelity. I had no reason, tonight or previously, to suspect her of infidelity, and I was honest enough with myself to notice that if this had been about someone else in her bed, I would have been less calm. What I was looking for was organization, structure, planning, the signature of a woman who had done something deliberate and written it down. Her email was clean, not suspiciously clean, clean in the way of someone who archived frequently. Her messages were what I would have expected. Her browser history had been cleared within the last week, which was either normal hygiene or something else. I couldn't tell yet. I moved to her user profile on the laptop. I knew the password because she had told it to me years ago, and in one of those details that now struck me as meaningful, she had never changed it, which suggested either complete trust or complete confidence that I would never look. Her documents folder was organized by year. Each year had subfolders. The subfolders were labeled with neutral things: finances, medical, house, work. I clicked through them in order, not rushing, reading file names without opening anything. I found it in a folder called Personal, inside a subfolder called Planning, in a document called Simply Overview. I opened it. It took me a moment, I would later think, to process what I was looking at. Not because the content was unclear, but because the form was so exactly what a serious plan looks like that my brain wanted to categorize it as something from her work. The first page was a summary. My full name at the top. A photograph, a candid one, taken before we'd met, that I recognized as from a conference where I'd given a talk. Below the photograph, a bulleted list of my professional associations, my approximate net worth at the time of the document's creation, the names of my parents and siblings, my siblings' spouses, the schools my niece and nephew attended, the approximate value of my parents' home, and this was the detail that stayed with me, a note about a trust my grandmother had established that I had only ever discussed with my brother. She had found out about the trust, I thought. From where? From my brother, or from my brother's wife, or from some document she had seen in our house, or from asking me a question so casually embedded in another conversation that I had answered it without noticing. The second page was a timeline. It began before we'd met. The first entry was dated 18 months before the party at Whitfield's. It read, identified subject through professional directory, redacted here because I don't want to write its name, cross-referenced with alumni networks, evaluated against criteria. Criteria, plural, a numbered list of 9 attributes, ranked in order of priority. I had matched on 7 of the 9. The 2 I had missed were flagged as acceptable deviation. The timeline continued. Cultivated connection with Whitfield spouse. That was how it was phrased, spouse, not by name, in the clinical register of someone taking notes that might later be audited through shared interest in book club. Attended 3 book club meetings. Developed friendship. Secured invitation to summer gathering at which subject was expected to be present. Subject I read. Subject. The rest of the timeline covered the relationship itself. It was long. It had been updated recently. The last entry was from 6 weeks ago. It described, in bloodless professional prose, each milestone of our time together. The introduction to my family. The first holiday together. The move. The decision to not have children yet, which had been, in the document's account, a delay she had negotiated to align with the completion of certain professional positioning on her end. The specific intervention she had made in my career, a dinner party she had arranged at which I had been introduced to a senior figure in my field, which I had always remembered as a wonderful coincidence. A recommendation letter from one of her mentors that had appeared in my life at a useful moment. A dinner with a couple who had, 2 months later, become clients of mine. Each of these was logged. Each of them had a note in her handwriting because at some point the document had been annotated by hand, scanned, and re-embedded, describing the outcome. Some of the outcomes were marked successful. Some were marked partial. A few were marked revisit. There was a section titled Future Objectives. I did not read it closely. What I read was enough to understand that it contained plans for the next 7 years, including the exact window in which she intended for us to begin trying to have children, the specific properties she intended us to acquire, the specific family members of mine she intended to influence or isolate, and the specific financial instruments she intended to consolidate. At the very bottom of the document, in a font size only slightly smaller than the rest, was a line that read, "If plan is compromised, see contingency." I did not open contingency. I closed the laptop. I sat at the desk in the dark. The strange thing, I thought, is that I am not angry. I sat there for a long time. I don't know how long, exactly, but long enough that the kitchen light I'd left on in the other room began to feel very far away, and I waited for anger to arrive. It didn't. What arrived instead was something much more useful. It was the feeling of a question being answered. Not one question. Every question. The night of my sister's wedding, I thought, When Inez took my mother aside for 40 minutes and came back with my mother convinced she was the best thing that had ever happened to me. I had wondered at the time what they had talked about. My mother had never warmed to anyone that quickly. The summer my brother was having money problems. Inez had suggested, with great delicacy, that we could help him, and then had structured the help in such a way that my brother had felt he owed something to her specifically, not to us. I had thought it was generous. I had thought it was her being thoughtful about his dignity. I had not thought it was her buying an asset. The argument, the only significant argument we had ever had, about whether to move closer to her parents or mine. I had wanted mine. She had wanted hers. We had compromised on a city that was, now that I thought about it, closer to hers. I had felt at the time that she had out-negotiated me. I had been proud of her for it. The time she had asked me, in bed, in the dark, about the specifics of my financial arrangements. The way she had listened. The questions she had asked. I had interpreted this as intimacy. I had interpreted it as a partner wanting to understand my life. Every memory I had of her, I realized, now had two versions. There was the version I had been living in, where she was a woman who loved me and whose love had been expressed through attention and planning and a certain intensity of focus. And there was the version I was now looking at, where the attention had been surveillance, the planning had been strategy, and the focus had been on an outcome I was not, myself, the beneficiary of. The question, I thought, is not which version is true. Both are true. The question is which one I'm going to live in going forward. And this was the part that, looking back, I would think of as the moment I became the person I needed to be for the next 4 days. Because I realized, sitting there at the desk in the dark, that I was not going to confront her. I was not going to give her the satisfaction of a scene. I was not going to hear her explanation, which I knew would be skilled and tearful and persuasive, because the person who had written that document was very, very good at what she did. What I was going to do was leave. Completely. Cleanly. Before she came home, I stood up. I walked to the kitchen. I poured the cold tea down the sink and rinsed the cup. I went upstairs and took a shower, and then I sat down at my own computer and began to make a list. I slept 4 hours and was awake before 6. I made coffee. I opened my list. The list had 3 columns: legal, financial, personal. Each column had items under it, in order of priority. I looked at the list the way I would have looked at a project plan at work, which is to say, I looked at it without feeling and I began to execute. First, I thought the attorney. My attorney was a woman named Hollis who had handled a sensitive matter for me 3 years earlier and who I trusted more than most people. I called her the minute her office opened. I told her assistant that it was urgent and personal, and when Hollis called me back within 15 minutes, I told her what had happened in the most compressed form possible. "I read you," she said. "You're not married, correct?" "Not married. Long-term relationship. Shared residence. Shared laptop. One vehicle jointly titled. One investment account jointly held, but the contributions are overwhelmingly mine. She has not been added to any of the trust structures. No children. What are you looking to do?" "Disentangle. By Friday." There was a brief pause on the line. "That's aggressive." "I know. Tell me what you want in order of importance." "I want her removed from every account she has access to. I want the joint investment account closed and the funds moved. I want the title on the vehicle transferred or the vehicle sold. I want her off the utilities, off the streaming services, off the subscriptions. I want to know what rights she has to the house. My name is on the deed. She is not on the deed, but she has lived there, and I want to know what I owe her, if anything, to leave cleanly. I want to not see her. I want to not speak to her. I want this done by Friday. Is there a risk she will become aggressive when she realizes what's happening?" Calculation, I thought. If she realizes what's happening while I am still in the house, she will not become aggressive in the shouting sense. She will become aggressive in the planning sense. She will accelerate something. She will cash something out. She will tell my mother something. She will have contingency. Yes, I said, but not in the way you're imagining. She's not dangerous physically. She is dangerous strategically. She will try to move first if she knows I am moving. Then we do this quietly and quickly, and she finds out when it's done. Yes, I can have a package to you by the end of the day. Thank you. I hung up. Second, I thought the money. I spent the morning on the phone with my bank, my brokerage, and the financial advisor who had been with my family since I was a child. Each conversation was short. Each ended with action items. By noon, I had initiated the closing of the joint investment account and the transfer of the funds, minus her documented contributions, which I calculated myself from our records and which I erred generously on. I was not trying to cheat her. I was trying to make it impossible for her to claim later that I had. I updated beneficiary designations on 3 accounts. I changed the passwords on everything. I called the credit card companies and removed her as an authorized user on the 2 cards where she was authorized. I froze the joint credit line we had open for home renovations and never used. I looked at the list of digital accounts we shared: streaming, subscriptions, cloud storage, the grocery delivery, and I sat with the question of whether to cancel them or simply remove myself. I decided to remove myself. Let her keep whatever she wanted. I did not want any of it. Third, I thought the house. This was the hardest one. The house was mine. The deed was in my name, predating the relationship, but she had lived in it for long enough that some jurisdictions would recognize a claim. I did not want a claim. I wanted her gone. But I also did not want to come back to the house at all. I did not want to sleep in that bed another night. I called a real estate attorney, different from Hollis, someone Hollis recommended, and had a 20-minute conversation about my options. The recommendation was this: offer her, in writing, a defined sum of money in exchange for her vacating the premises within 30 days, removing her belongings, and signing a release. The sum was not small. It was not punitive. It was the number that would make the problem go away, and my real estate attorney told me, with the candor of a woman who had done this many times, that paying the number was always cheaper than fighting it. I authorized the number. Fourth, I thought my family. This was the one I had been dreading, and not for the reason most people would expect. I was not dreading telling my family that my relationship had ended. My family would absorb that. What I was dreading was telling my family, specifically my mother, specifically my brother, that they had been to some degree targets of an operation. That some of the warmth they had felt toward Inez had been cultivated. That some of what they had told her had been extracted. I called my brother first. I told him the short version. I did not send him the document. I told him only what he needed to know, which was this: that my relationship was ending, that the ending was not negotiable, that I did not want to discuss the reasons in detail, but he should know they were serious, and that he should be careful in the coming weeks about any contact she might attempt to have with him. Careful how, he said. She may reach out. She may want to stay in touch. She may frame herself as wanting to preserve the family connections. I am asking you not to let her. I am asking you to be polite and firm and to not answer any questions she asks about me, my whereabouts, or anything financial. Tell me what's happening. I can't yet. I will eventually. For now, I am asking you to trust me. He was quiet for a moment. Okay, and I'm going to need you to tell Mom. Tell her what? That Inez and I are over. That it's permanent. That she is not to be invited to anything. Not to be updated on family matters. Not to be given my new address when I have one. Not to be allowed into any conversation about me. Mom loves her. I know. Mom is going to ask what happened. Tell her I will talk to her when I am ready. Tell her I am well. Tell her I am making a decision I have thought carefully about. Tell her I love her and I will call her when I can. Where are you going? Good question, I thought. Calculation. I am going somewhere where I can sleep. Somewhere where no one knows me. Somewhere where the version of myself I have been, the version Inez was designing around, cannot follow me unless I choose for it to. Somewhere I have always meant to go and never gone, because she had always had a reason for us to go somewhere else instead. "I'll tell you when I land," I said, but not before. Wednesday went the way Tuesday night had planned. I worked through the list. I executed. I ate twice, briefly, because I needed to, not because I wanted to. I slept another 4 hours. On Thursday morning, Hollis's package arrived. It was thorough. It contained a letter to Inez that my real estate attorney had drafted, the offer, the release, the notice of account changes, the itemization of what I believed I owed her, and what I had already transferred to a holding account in her name, pending her signature on the release. It contained a separate document instructing her to return the shared laptop, which was legally mine. I had purchased it, and which I had, in preparation, already copied in full to an external drive and then wiped from the cloud. The laptop, I thought. She will know the minute she sees the laptop is gone from the office. I had decided about the laptop on Wednesday morning. The document was evidence. Evidence of what? I was not yet sure. Not a crime. Certainly there was no crime here unless you counted the crime of making a person the subject of a spreadsheet, but evidence of something, and evidence I wanted in my possession. I had copied everything. I had taken a laptop with me. Let her come home to its absence and wonder. I looked at Hollis's package, and I thought, this is the document that ends my life as I've been living it. I'm going to sign it now, before I can think about it anymore, because if I think about it anymore, I will not do anything differently, but I will waste time. I signed it. I scanned it. I sent it back to Hollis. Hollis confirmed receipt and told me the letter would be delivered to Inez by courier on Friday morning at 10, which was approximately 2 hours after I expected to be in the air. I booked the flight, where I thought, and then I thought of the place I had always meant to go. It was not dramatic. It was not a hideout. It was a coastal region in a country I had visited once, briefly, as a young man, and had never returned to despite intending to many times. The reason I had never returned was, when I thought about it honestly, Inez. The first time I had suggested it. Early in the relationship, she had gently redirected us to somewhere more convenient. The second time, she had produced a work conflict. The third time, she had suggested a friend's wedding as an alternative. I had, on each occasion, accepted the redirection without noticing it was a redirection. I booked a hotel. Then, after a brief consideration, I canceled the hotel and booked something smaller, a rental, a cottage with a view of the water, for 2 weeks with the option to extend. 2 weeks, I thought, is the right length of time. Long enough to stop hearing her voice in my head. Short enough that I have not committed to being a different person. I packed a single bag. I did not pack any photographs. I did not pack any of the books we had read together. I did not pack anything she had given me. On Thursday evening, I went to see my parents. This was not on the list. This was a decision I made between Wednesday and Thursday. Once my brother had broken the news and my mother had called me 3 times, each time more worried. I went because I owed her a face. I did not go to explain. I went because she had raised me, and because I did not want her to learn from a distance that the version of me she had been speaking to for the last week was already the version that was about to leave. My mother is a small woman with a steady voice who has outlived 2 husbands and most of her friends, and who asks questions the way other people aim arrows. She poured me a coffee, sat me at the kitchen table, and looked at me until I spoke. "I'm going away for a while," I said. "Tomorrow morning. Inez and I are over. That's not negotiable, and it's not a temporary thing. I can't give you the whole story yet. I will, eventually. Right now I can tell you 3 things. 1, she is not the person any of us thought she was. 2, I am certain about this. I have evidence. I have not made an impulsive decision. And 3, I am fine. I will be fine. I am already fine." She held her coffee cup with both hands. "Where are you going?" I told her. "For how long?" 2 weeks initially. Possibly longer. "Will you call me?" "Yes." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I liked her." "I know. I was wrong too." "No, you weren't. She is very likable. That was the point." "I don't understand." "You will. Not tonight, but you will." She looked at me the way she used to look at me when I was 7 years old and had just told her something she wasn't sure was a lie. Then she nodded once and stood up and walked around the table and put her arms around my shoulders from behind and held me for a moment. "Go," she said. "Call me when you get there." I went. Friday morning I woke at 4. I showered. I dressed. I walked through the house one last time. This is not nostalgia, I thought as I moved through the rooms. This is inventory. I am looking to make sure I have not forgotten anything I want, and also, and this is more important, to make sure I am not taking anything I will later regret having taken. I do not want to bring any of her with me. I do not want, in 3 months, to open a drawer in the place I'm going and find a scarf of hers, a note, a photograph, a piece of jewelry I once bought her that somehow ended up among my things. I want to leave cleanly. I went through the bedroom first, then the office, where her document had been, then the kitchen, where we had cooked together on 400 evenings, then the back patio, where we had eaten dinner most summer nights, where she had once on one of those nights held my hand across the table and told me I was the best decision she had ever made. I had believed her, I thought, and now I understood that she had meant it, and had meant it in a way I had not understood. I had been her best decision. That was not the same as being loved. I stood on the patio for about 2 minutes. Then I went back inside, picked up my bag, and walked out the front door. On the counter, I left the single line I had decided on the night before. I read the document. "I hope you find what you're actually looking for." I left it next to her favorite coffee mug, which I had washed the night before and set out, because I wanted the last thing she saw of our life to be the small politeness of a clean cup. Not because I forgave her. I did not forgive her. I was not sure I ever would. But because I was not leaving in anger, and I wanted the room to know it. I drove to the airport. I returned the car to the long-term lot. I checked in. I sat at the gate with a paper cup of coffee and watched the sky turn pale. Calculation, I thought for the last time. At 10, the courier will arrive at the house. Inez will not be home yet. She lands at 4 in the afternoon, so the courier will leave the package at the front door. She will walk in at approximately 5. She will see the envelope. She will open it. She will read Hollis's letter. She will walk into the office and see that the laptop is missing. She will walk into the kitchen and see the note. She will understand, in that order, that I have known, that I have acted, and that there is nothing to negotiate. She will try to call me. My number will be changed by then. She will try to email me. I will have set up an autoresponder directing all further communication to Hollis. She will try to call my brother, my mother, my closest friends. They have been warned. She will reach no one. She will spend the evening alone in the house. She will spend the weekend alone in the house. On Monday, the real estate attorney will contact her about the offer. She will, I suspect, accept it because the alternative is a fight she does not want and cannot win, and because she is, above all, a calculator. She will do the math and she will sign. By the end of the month, she will be gone from the house. By the end of the year, she will be gone from my life. The document she made will become, over time, a strange artifact, one I will think about less and less, and one I will never entirely forget. None of this will require anything further from me. The gate agent announced my flight. I had the window seat. I put my bag in the overhead. I sat down. I fastened my seatbelt. I did not take out a book. I did not take out my phone. I watched the runway workers in their vests move around the wheels of the plane, and I thought about how strange it was that I was in a place I had meant to go for most of my adult life, and that the thing that had sent me there was the exact moment I had stopped pretending that what I wanted mattered less than what I could live with. The plane pushed back from the gate. The plane taxied. The plane lifted off. Somewhere under the clouds, I realized I had not slept properly in 2.5 days. I reclined the seat. I closed my eyes. The engine sounded from inside the cabin like a single sustained breath held very patiently for a very long time. I slept. I slept the whole flight. I slept through the meal service, through the 2 movies I might have watched, through the announcements in 2 languages. I slept the deep, untroubled sleep of a man who has stopped being someone else's plan. When a flight attendant touched my shoulder to tell me we were beginning our descent, I opened my eyes and looked down at the coastline I had meant for half my life to see, and I felt, for the first time in longer than I had realized, like the only person in charge of where I was going next. I landed. I collected my bag. I found a car the rental company had sent. I drove along a road that ran close to the water for an hour, with the window down, smelling salt, and something green the first could not name. I found a cottage. The key was where the owner had said it would be. I let myself in. I put my bag down. I walked to the window and looked out at the sea. There was a small table on the deck. 2 chairs. The sun was lower than it had been when I'd boarded. Birds I did not recognize moved in a slow line along the horizon. I sat down in one of the chairs. I did not move for a long time. Calculation, I thought, and then I stopped myself because there was no calculation to make. There was nothing to solve. There was nothing to plan. There was a house I was no longer in, a woman I was no longer with, a document I had read and understood and left behind. There was a coastline I had finally arrived at. There was a seat in the sun. There was the rest of my life. I leaned back in the chair. I closed my eyes. I slept again.
Thanks for listening.